welcome everyone to Clydesider's discussion on creativity and mental well-being. And I'm joined today by Stephen Watt, Susan Rose and Helen McHugh. I'll let each of them introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, my name's Stephen. I've been writing poetry for about 20 years now, performing spoken word for 10. I'm the poet in residence at Dumbarton Football Club and have been in this role for 4 years now. I've got 4 books published so far, and I've edited 2 punk poetry collections, one for the Joe Strummer Foundation, hence the Clash t-shirt, and one for Pete Shelley of Buzzcocks, and that's due to come out in December.
Hiya, I'm Susan. What I did at art school was painting and printmaking, but since then I work in illustration, I work in community arts, so like my focus at the moment is book illustration. So I work under a pseudonym for that called Zuja Nova. I've worked in the community and community arts. I'm a tutor for Make It Your Own in Ayrshire. I'm a coordinating tutor at the moment. You might have seen some of my videos for Clydesiders. That was me that did the ferry caravan video. Just started making video tutorials this year, so always looking to kind of branch out and try new things with my artwork.
Hi, I'm Helen McHugh, counsellor and psychotherapist. I had about 23 years in social care. That was my background before I went into the counselling role. I have a great interest in how the physical body and mental health, how that all works together. So I'm very keen to try different things in the therapy room with people. I like to bring art into my sessions and movement wherever possible.
Creativity help mental well-being, in your sort of opinions and your experience?
I absolutely think that it does help your mental well-being, Amanda. Say you're struggling with something, if you change focus and can concentrate your focus on another activity so that you're creating something or there's a start and an end point, then I think there is more chance that your mental health will improve. And it can be anything. It can be baking, it can be sowing a seed, it can be creating a collage. I'm not particularly arty, but I find the whole thing quite therapeutic. Sometimes our brains can get stuck on things, and so I think that art helps. I think that absolutely you're giving your brain something different to focus on. It just allows them in many ways to express what they're feeling. So that's why art is actually good for your health. I'm quite interested in how art can help people who've experienced trauma. You don't necessarily have to identify the trauma, but the act of putting the paintbrush on the page or whatever it is and having something that you've created that means something to you, and then you can choose to share that with a psychotherapist, a counsellor, whatever, or not, or that can just be your own expression and you alone know what that means.
I think you're saying it's therapeutic, and when I was 19 I got mugged twice within 6 months by drug addicts, and I had to start attending counselling then because self-esteem was out the window. I started writing poetry within those 6 months. I mean, I always enjoyed writing, but poetry was quite fresh. And I was saying, is this kind of a good outlet for me? And the counsellor advised me that was exactly what it was doing for you. It was giving me some way of expressing like how I was feeling at that time. And interestingly, I wasn't writing about the muggings themselves. I was writing about various other things in my life, but I was able to kind of just get that out my system. And whether it's painting rocks or if it's writing blogs or whatever, then I think you're absolutely spot on with that. And that therapeutic aspect of being creative is probably underrated, to be honest with you.
I think I've got the perspective from practicing art for well-being and also like facilitating others. I think probably similarly to you, Helen, to do something creative and to seek escape from that. Making artwork, drawing is sort of a way to kind of disappear and detach from what's going on immediately. I'll still do things like automatic writing as well if I'm in a kind of lower patch at the start of the day, because it's sort of like an overfilled car park for your brain, just putting it down on paper. When I'm working in community arts as well, I've just seen how much agency and self-esteem, learning a new skill, learning a creative skill, surprising yourself, like how much that actually enriches somebody's life and the change that that can have on someone is just, it's amazing. It's something that I really, really love about the community artwork job that I do. It just can give so much back.
I think obviously the experience I'm talking about is very much by myself, but that being able to share your work and to be guided, and these workshops are just invaluable when it comes to that release.
I remember once I worked with someone who was quite an anxious person when they came into the therapy room, and it was like the mindful colouring, and the lady, she didn't really want to give eye contact. She had a lot to tell me in the first session, and I said absolutely. So I put all these on the table, and she was like a child in a sweet shop, her eyes lit up, and I said, I might join you too. So actually we both sat. I obviously had my professional hat on, and inside I was thinking I'll write all this up later, but actually it really helped the thing flow. She didn't want to give eye contact, so I kind of took my lead from her, but she really said that she felt it unlocked something with her. So that was wonderful, and I actually think it can be transformational to people. I've worked with people who've said, no, that's absolutely not for me, Helen.
Yeah.
No. And I've said, listen, I am the least artistic in terms of like line drawing and stuff. People surprise themselves all the time because they surprise themselves by almost how good they feel after it. That sense of achievement that they almost haven't had since they were younger.
Share your artwork, share your creativity is an important part of it as well.
Yeah, I've experienced it in the summer where there's been a prisons project run by First Time Inside. They called it Sought and Sonnets, and they were getting prisoners to write poetry about their experiences of the pandemic. And just what we're saying there about things that you maybe haven't done since you were a child, you had these prisoners trying to articulate how they were feeling. And I think what maybe surprised all the panel, and there was 42 of us on the panel, was just how good some of the writing, but some of the expression that was used in there as well, and the range of kind of subject that they actually used in these poems. And subsequently there's now an anthology getting created and getting published, so they've now got that to kind of look forward to. And then lo and behold, Mr. Ian Rankin's gone and written the foreword for it. One of the ladies who had written has now come onto Twitter, has said this has given her a kind of direction. She now realises that she's a good writer, and to have that approval by Ian Rankin it's just glorious. You can actually see her glowing in social media about this,
There was a thing I heard on Radio 4, it's very relevant, and it was called The Art of Survival. And it was that very thing, Stephen. It was people who had been homeless long term, and they actually took art out to people and suggested they have a go. And it was that same thing, older men going, if you think I'm going to pick up that paintbrush, whatever, you've got another thing coming. But then they could just sit and write. They could write poems, and it is just it's so humbling and so emotional to see people attempt things and have a laugh. That's the other thing, I think, to encourage people's sense of humour in these things is always great, because I'm pretty useless when it comes to art or that kind of thing. But I have a go, I don't care. I have a go regardless, because I enjoy the whole process of it.
I think a lot of people do dabble with like poetry or art. Like everybody can do it. You can just write down a few thoughts and whatever else, and it's up to you. If you're getting something out of it, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. If you're feeling satisfied that you're getting something out of your system or getting it down on paper, a lot of the time this works for me. It makes so much more sense to me on paper than I do trying to articulate things verbally. So I just think that it's just a wonderful reward, and I'd love to see more and more people do it.
I've had a lot of people come into the workshop, I can't draw, I can't do this, I've not done any sewing since school. And I think it's something that people gradually forget as they get older, as life and different things get to them, that humans are innately creative. From people learning how to cook, from people inventing things throughout the decades, centuries, we are a creative being, and that's what we do. And it's just giving yourself the permission to access that, I think, a lot of the time, without any judgment. I always say, just give it a go. And in my job as a tutor, when I'm delivering independently, I think trying not to be too serious about it, because I think there is such a culture of like, oh, that's art, that's not for me, that's not accessible. And I think like a big part in that is having that light-hearted air. Like it doesn't need to be that serious. See what happens. I think that's really, really a huge part in people trying to access that.
Do you think that there's sort of that kind of image that art is only for a certain sort of cultured type of
Yes.
I kind of put a real barrier there for a lot of people. They feel that most people have some creativity within them, that they just need to find the right buttons to press to tap into it.
Absolutely, Amanda. I completely agree with that. It's just about finding the thing that works for you best. Sometimes if I'm supporting people, I'll say, what are your hobbies and interests? And 9 times out of 10, people will say, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. I've not done things. So then I have to take them back, usually to school, and say, what were you passionate about at school? It's just finding the right way. So if people are willing to try, whether it be, gardening, going and planting seeds, or whatever it is that they like having their hands in the earth and create, that's still creating, whether it's baking, whether it's gardening, whether it's painting a picture, taking a photograph, writing a poem, whatever it is, it's absolutely still creative. And I think the more that we can inspire people to just try it.
It's taken away that stigma of, oh, this is for a certain class of people, oh, this is not for me, this is stupid. I think as well, like the value of art and the value of creative practice is diminished by, this idea of what are you going to do for work? Yeah. Like I think that's the sort of first level that kind of puts that down, is how are you going to make a living, and that's a big deterrent for sure.
Certainly, I mean, like poetry has been considered that, for many, many decades, centuries, for upper class kind of minions, and you're like, it's absolutely not. It's a changing creature all the time. And I think that what I got kicks out of recently was that one of my friends, he works in a car manufacturing factory, and he was speaking away to some of his friends. They were asking, what are you doing at the weekend? Going to watch my pal Stevie do some poetry. You can imagine the reaction, like 100 guys going, you're doing what? And he's like, no, it's like us. It's like us, and that was actually one of the most rewarding things I think any of my friends have ever said to me. It's like us, it's like normal, it's the way we talk, and it's about the things we talk about.
It's almost a stigma that poetry has, isn't it? It's really sad, because it's the most beautiful way to share a story or share information. And it's funny how certain creative things you find relaxing and other things actually almost can cause stress as well if you don't feel.
It's definitely a very personal thing. Like I think everyone's got their own kind of character traits for stuff that they have more time for, I guess. Like for me, like I make really detailed illustration and I really enjoy that. But I'll work with some people they want to do a painting, they have no time to sit and do a portrait or anything like that. They'll want to just do something expressive. So I think it's very much an individual thing.
Apparently activities such as knitting, crochet, even writing, actually, apparently they help to soothe the brain, because they're like a kind of repetitious activity. So that kind of repetition is good. I remember my mum, I can't knit to save myself. I like knitting, but I'm not very quick. And she just could hold a conversation. She could watch the TV whilst knitting this ornate piece of, you're just like, how on earth? I was like, in, over, through.
It's like my mum and my granny as well. They're like that, shouting at the telly as well.
They'd be interested in sort of tapping into their creativity. What tips would you give them?
I think just not being afraid for something not to turn out the way that they imagined, and not to see that as a failure. It's like everything that you make is an attempt. Everything that you make is something that didn't exist before, you know what I mean? Even if it's not what you hoped or it's something completely different, it's still something that didn't exist before, and that in itself is amazing. So I would say that's what I would say to somebody that wants to try.
Yeah, that's
I think that's very, very good advice. And I think from a writing aspect, I would advise that as and when anything comes into your brain, get it written down. And I've been using my phone a lot of the time, so during the last few months, I've been up countless mountains, and you're getting ideas because walking is just such a fantastic vehicle for imagination. So I'll be writing down things as I'm going up these hills, but whilst it might pertain to something I've seen on that hill, it may fit into another poem in future. So, for example, if I have an A4 bit of paper and I write all the notes I've got on my phone at the bottom of the page, and as I'm writing up the poem and it's kind of coming to you, occasionally there's a line that I've got in those notes that goes, that's the one that fits in perfectly, or a word that really works well for you. But you'll probably hear a lot of writers grumble about that fantastic idea at 2:00 in the morning, and then neglect, and I'll remember it in the morning, and you don't, it's gone. So you do kind of have to force yourself to squeeze your eyes open, get it written down on your phone, and then you can return to it when you're ready to sit down and put it down on paper.
Yeah, I know that one, the 2:00 in the morning eyes popping out. Yeah. It's not good.
It's a horrible thing. See, when you forget it, when you know it's a gem of an idea. So, also happens when you're drunk, by the way. So I'll need to remember that. You go in the morning, it's gone. It's a great idea at the time.
Just to add to what Stephen and Susan have already said, I think there is no right or wrong. I think it's about, if it's something that's come from you and it means something to you, it can be a tiny little squiggle, it can be, but if that means something to you, you've expressed it, it's something that's no longer living in your head, it's something that's now on paper and on the page, and it can be whatever you want it to be. It can mean whatever is significant to you, and you can keep that to yourself, or you can share it in a group. Just keeping it low key and no expectations whatsoever. And my experience is that people cannot talk enough about the things that they've created and what it was meant to be, but then it morphed into this, and actually they quite like it the way it's turned out because it was something different from what they had in their mind when they started. It's as if it unlocks something in someone's brain to enable them to put it down on the paper or whatever medium they choose.
I think what you're saying there as well, Helen, is the interpretation. Sometimes it's good not to kind of divulge too much about what your art is supposed to be about. So sometimes you just need to read the poem and let people make their own mind up what it's about. And it has happened before that I've had someone interpret a poem entirely different to what I meant it to be, but I stood there smiling because that's great that somebody else has seen it from an angle I didn't even consider it, and I bloody well wrote it.
So that is really cool when you've made something and it means something to you, but it means something completely different to someone else, and it just shows you like the chain reaction that happens is amazing. That is so cool.
If there was anything else you're wanting to add that we've not sort of just kind of covered in the discussion up to now?
Probably shouldn't get political, but just in the climate that we're in just now, it's really disappointing to see like how much the value of this is eroded, how meaningless it seems to be to those in power, obviously not to everybody that benefits from it. I think it's worth reiterating as well, what would your lockdown look like without creativity? Yeah. How would it be to be in your home, nothing to watch, nothing to read, no images to look at, no social media, no recipes to cook? Where would you get your banana loaf recipe? Do you know what I mean? Like it just gets so frustrating as somebody that knows and has seen firsthand. Like I've actually worked with people that have disclosed, you know, it saved my life. I've known of people like that. And it's just so disappointing, and I should probably leave it there and not get too political.
I think that's so true. Susan.
Creativity tends to be, well, you can do it with all the internet and all that as well, but actually you can do it without all that. There's something about, I feel anyway, I'm quite passionate about, because I'm a total technophobe as well, but that's another story. But I think there's something about just working with the tools that you have and not having to go and check out something or just do it because you have pleasure and delight in doing it. So yeah, I think there's something about it doesn't have to be connected to a computer. Walking, incidentally, for me is a wonderful way of, that's my think time, because that is when my brain really gets into And I'm the same. I'll like put things in my phone or write stuff down or whatever, just because that's when it comes to me. And if you never have that opportunity to kind of quieten your mind and just reconnect with yourself and with nature, then that can be problematic to a lot of people. And I know, all of us guys are quite lucky because we can get out there and we can be active. But I guess there's the people that are stuck in at home, or their mobility doesn't allow them to do that. So some just trying to think of ways that helps them get out of their kind of day-to-day lives and create something beautiful, something different. Even if they create something and they think that is absolutely rubbish, it doesn't matter. It's the pleasure in doing the activity that counts.
Like everything that we do that we take for granted, like making the dinner, everything that we do is an act of creation. The conversations that we have, like the thoughts that we put out there, like, what is it? Abracadabra, create as I speak. You know what I mean? Like everything that we put out there is an act of creation. So I think whether you want to draw yourself a moustache, whether you want to make yourself a bracelet, whether you want to knit with the telly on, I think all of that is, I don't see anything as above or below. I think everything is active creation, and everybody should be able to, give themselves permission to try, like, and see how it might impact their life.
There are people who are out there trying to earn a living in the arts, and I think it's been quite well discussed within kind of literary sector that that poets haven't been paid, and it's something that is really coming to light just now with the fact that creativity in the arts has been shunted to the side, and that it's something you don't need to be paid for or whatever else, which is absolute nonsense. I think it's something I've been a little bit more careful with over the last few years, not to just expect everything to be for free. If you're putting out a product, a book or whatever else, it's costing money to design that cover, to print it, to publish it. I think that there is obviously good sense in what Helen was saying about doing it for yourself, but there is also another kind of agenda about actually kind of getting it out there, and actually shouldn't necessarily always be free.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think maybe what I'd said was I meant more that to be accessed by everyone, but I definitely think I draw really clear boundaries about payment for my work, and I think that is something that people do need to uphold, and you have to guard your boundaries, and you have to be aware of what you're worth and don't accept any less. I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. That
sounds hard line, but would you be like that to your plumber? Oh, I'll give you some exposure for your job. Do you know what I mean? Like, your plumber's not going to be like, oh, I'll take those exposure pounds and pay my gas. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's been a very undervalued sector for too long, hasn't it? It's either art for free or art at a crazy price, and there doesn't seem to be too much in between.
I absolutely agree, Amanda, and I think that I've been very fortunate that I've had occupation to kind of keep me going during the pandemic. I think for a number of years I said the only way you ever make money in poetry is if you've snuffed it. All the money for poetry is after you've passed. But no, that there is kind of money to be made. It's not vast sums, but just what Susan was saying about knowing your worth, and kind of if you've really put in the effort, that you should kind of expect that to come back.
Think about it, it's a really specific skill set, and I think that's forgotten. I think that's what's undervalued as well. The skill set that you have. Sometimes the projects that I'm doing, for example, videos right now, I'm doing graphic design, I'm doing illustration, I'm doing video, and it's a really specific skill set, and that's something that I have actually amassed in the 8 years or whatever it is since I was, at art school. And that's through my life experience, through the times I've put myself out there. It's through the sleepless nights like yourself, Stephen, that is precious.
I think everybody's right in that, we kind of have to support one another. We all have to be aware of our worth, because it's easy just to say, I'll do this, I'll do that. As a complementary therapist, I've done that for many, many years. It's time to think, right, okay, well, this is my cost, this is what I'm worth now.
There's so many different levels, I think, of creativeness and the impact it has on our minds and thought processes. I think it was Susan, you said earlier that if all those examples of creation didn't happen, What a very, very black and white world we were talking
I used to, my old boss used to give me a hard time about my art degree all the time, every day at work. He used to give me a hard time. And I was like, well, I have the same level degree as you. And also, who designed the textbooks that you learned from, and the shoes that you got here in, and the car that you drove here in? You know what I mean? It's my people, so don't.
Drop mic.
Exactly, it's my people who designed all the stuff. So.
Be really interested, hopefully, that anyone watching this would be up for sharing some of their thoughts. So if you've got any thoughts for yourselves of the links between creativity and well-being, or what works for you, please share them in the comments on our social media, because we'd love to hear a whole lot of different perspectives on this. So I'll leave it there and just say cheerio to our guests here. And thank you all so very much for joining me this evening. And best of luck with all your creative endeavours in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers for asking us.